work in security or IT today, it can feel like you are swimming in data. Logs, emails, customer records, screenshots, tickets, shared drive clutter, and years of backups all pile up in the background. Keeping everything can feel safer because you might need it someday. But every extra copy is another thing that can be stolen, leaked, or pulled into legal discovery. In this narration, developed by Bare Metal Cyber as part of the Tuesday Insights feature in Bare Metal Cyber magazine, we are going to talk about data retention and disposal as a practical security control, not just a dry policy topic. Data retention and disposal is simply about making intentional decisions about what to keep, for how long, and how to securely get rid of it when its useful life is over. Instead of treating data as something you stash forever, you treat it as something that has a life. It is created, used, possibly archived, and then destroyed on purpose. When you think this way, retention and disposal start to support the work you already care about, like incident response, compliance, e-discovery, and everyday operations. They stop being dusty documents on a shared drive and become tools that make your environment more understandable and less risky.
At a basic level, data retention and disposal is a people and process discipline that is supported by technology. Legal and compliance teams define the rules that say how long different kinds of information must be kept. Security and IT operations translate those rules into behaviors in backup platforms, logging systems, email and collaboration tools, and storage. Business owners help by labeling and categorizing the data they generate so those rules can be applied correctly. You can think of it as a core part of information governance that touches security operations, infrastructure, and application teams at the same time. It is helpful to separate data retention and disposal from related ideas like backups and archives. A backup is about recovery after something fails. An archive is about long-term access, usually for reference or historical value. Retention and disposal sit above those concepts. They decide whether the data is supposed to exist at all, and for how long. If you never define that, you drift into two unhealthy extremes. One is hoarding, where you keep everything forever, just in case. The other is random deletion to save space, without understanding the legal, operational, or investigative consequences. To make this concrete, many organizations break the problem into a few simple elements. They define data categories, such as customer records, human resources files, security logs, and source code. They agree on retention periods for each category based on legal, regulatory, and business needs. They decide which storage locations and formats are approved over that lifetime, such as primary databases, log platforms, and archives. Finally, they define disposal methods that make sure data cannot be easily reconstructed once it is time for it to go. With even a basic version of these elements, you have the beginnings of a real life cycle instead of a pile.
Behind the scenes, data retention and disposal can be imagined as a loop that keeps running quietly. Data is created, it is tagged with at least a basic category, it is stored in approved locations, and the clock starts on whatever retention rule applies. Over time, systems track how old it is and move it through different stages, such as online storage, cheaper archive, and then deletion or destruction. The building blocks are simple: categories, rules, storage systems that understand those rules, and some way to show that it all actually happened when someone asks. In real environments, that loop is usually implemented with a mix of tools, rather than one big platform. Storage arrays and cloud object stores use lifecycle policies to move data between hot, cool, and archival tiers, and then delete it when it ages out. Email and collaboration tools apply mailbox and channel retention settings. Log platforms roll older data to cheaper storage and eventually purge it. Backup tools decide how many versions to keep and how long they live. All of these systems need clear mappings from data categories to concrete settings, or they fall back to a default of keeping everything forever. Consider a simple end-to-end example using security logs. Engineering and security teams decide which log sources are in scope and what they need for investigations and threat hunting. Legal and compliance teams add any mandatory minimum retention periods. Together, they arrive at a rule like this. Keep full fidelity logs for 90 days for detailed investigations. Keep summarized data for a year for trend analysis and audits. Then delete both. The log platform is configured to follow that pattern, rolling data through storage tiers and finally removing it. This flow quietly assumes a lot of things, such as accurate asset lists, reliable timestamps, consistent labeling, and someone accountable for tuning the policy when needs change. You can see data retention and disposal in everyday patterns, even when nobody uses those words. One common pattern is log management, where teams keep detailed records for a few months and summaries for longer. Another is email and chat, where an organization decides how long everyday conversations live, compared to formal records that must be preserved. These choices directly shape what evidence exists when something goes wrong and someone needs to reconstruct a timeline. A practical quick win is to focus on one noisy area instead of trying to solve everything at once. Shared drives and general-purpose cloud storage are prime candidates. You might sort by identifying a handful of common data types in those locations, such as draft project documents, exported reports, or ad hoc spreadsheets. Then you agree on simple rules, like deleting draft documents that have not changed in 2 years unless they are marked as records. That one change can dramatically shrink the collection of forgotten files that still contain sensitive information but serve no real purpose.
More mature efforts weave retention and disposal into broader data governance and privacy work. Teams connect retention rules into their data catalog, privacy impact assessments, and data loss prevention controls. Customer data moving from production systems into analytics platforms follows a defined path, with specific points where identifiers are removed, access is restricted, and old records are destroyed. Legal, privacy, and security functions coordinate so that right-to-be-forgotten requests, e-discovery for legal cases, and security investigations do not fight each other. Over time, new systems are designed with retention and disposal built in rather than bolted on.
When data retention and disposal are done intentionally, the benefits show up as clarity. Teams know what information they have, why they have it, and how long it will be around. That clarity makes it faster to investigate incidents, respond to audits, and answer questions from regulators or customers. It also reduces the blast radius when there is a breach or a misconfiguration. If you are not holding on to years of unnecessary data, there is less that can be exposed in the first place.
There are real trade-offs, and it helps to acknowledge them openly. Designing and maintaining retention rules requires time from legal, compliance, security, IT, and business owners. People who are used to keeping everything just in case may be uncomfortable at first. Some systems are not built for fine-grained policies, which means you either over-retain or put effort into workarounds. Gaps in metadata, such as missing labels or unclear ownership, make it harder to apply consistent rules across the environment and can slow down progress.
It is just as important to be honest about the limits. No retention program can perfectly control every copy of data spread across laptops, mobile devices, personal notes, screenshots, and unsanctioned tools. Automation can help, but it depends on asset inventories, tagging, and integrations that take time to build. A balanced way to think about this is that good data retention and disposal shrink the problem space and give you leverage, but they do not magically eliminate all sprawl. You still need periodic cleanup and a realistic view of where exceptions live. There are recognizable warning signs that your data retention and disposal efforts are not working. One is when you have impressive policy documents, but all of your systems are still using default settings. Another is when cleanup happens as a heroic one-time project, where teams delete terabytes of data and then drift back into old habits. A third is when it is not clear who owns the decisions, so questions about how long to keep something bounce between departments and never get resolved. Shallow adoption shows up in small frustrations. People keep creating folders called Old, Archive, or Do Not Delete, but nothing ever truly leaves the environment. Backups and log stores grow endlessly. During an incident, the security team cannot find the right data quickly, even though they are sure it must be stored somewhere. Compliance staff worry that sensitive information has spread into places no one is watching. In that situation, each new system adds to the weight of legacy risk rather than reducing it. Healthy signals look different and feel calmer. When someone asks, "How long do we keep customer chat transcripts?" or "Where do our production logs go after 90 days?" there is a straightforward answer and a place to point for proof. Storage and logging platforms have visible lifecycle settings tied to clear, business-friendly categories. Periodic reviews happen so rules can adjust to new regulations, new systems, or new investigative needs. Most importantly, teams designing a new application or workflow consider retention and disposal at the same time as they think about access control and logging, instead of treating it as an afterthought. At its heart, data retention and disposal is about deciding how long information should live, and then making sure it leaves on purpose instead of by accident. When you treat data this way, you reduce risk and noise while making it easier to find and use the information that truly matters. You move from hoarding just in case to keeping exactly what you need to run the business, serve customers, and investigate problems. This way of thinking fits alongside identity management, logging, and backup as a core part of running secure and compliant systems. It is especially helpful for messy, real-world problems, such as sprawling shared drives, unclear evidence during incidents, and anxiety about what might be hiding in old systems. A practical next step is to pick a single area, such as a shared drive, a log platform, or a mailbox type, and ask whether the data there has a clear path from creation to secure disposal. Even a small improvement in one of those areas can deliver quick wins in clarity, confidence, and reduced exposure.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.